I used to view patients' accounts of after-death sensations either as mental disturbances or as products of imagination. But one morning in 1977, I was trying to revive a patient. When he regained consciousness, he anxiously told me he had visited actual hell. This man was so frightened that his fear transmitted itself to me. This and similar incidents left me with no doubt that there is life after death, and this life is not always joyful, concluded cardiologist Maurice Rawlings, who has extensive experience in patient resuscitation. When bringing patients back to life, Maurice Rawlings found that if the patient was questioned immediately following resuscitation, it was not unusual to hear unsettling experiences from the other side. The cardiologist devoted his book specifically to these patient experiences. In it, Rawlings presented cases of negative afterlife encounters as recounted by his patients. "Your hell is interfering with my work. I always thought death was simply physical extinction, but I had to abandon my views because one day I came face to face with another world. On that day, I was examining a patient. He was 48 years old and worked as a rural postman," said Maurice Rawlings. During the examination, the patient's heart stopped. The patient collapsed onto the floor in front of Rawlings. The doctor did everything he could to save the man's life. Several times, the patient regained consciousness, only to lose it again. Every time he opened his eyes, he shook the room with piercing screams. He claimed he was in hell and begged to be saved. I was afraid of losing the patient, but even more frightened by his talk of hell. Every time the patient regained consciousness, his face twisted into a horrifying grimace. He trembled all over, opened his eyes wide, and urgently said, "Don't you understand? I'm in hell. Help me." Initially, I dismissed his words, assuming they were caused by extreme emotional distress. I told him, "Your hell is interfering with my work," Maurice Rawlings recalled. Soon the doctor became convinced that the patient's fear was genuine. The patient was in a state of terror unlike anything Rawlings had previously witnessed. When the patient regained consciousness again, he asked the doctor to pray for him. "I'm a doctor, not a priest," Rawlings responded nervously to the patient's request. The patient persisted, claiming this was his only chance for salvation. Realizing it was the patient's final wish, Rawlings remembered a short prayer he'd learned in Sunday school. Continuing to resuscitate the patient, he prayed aloud. The patient was saved and sent to a hospital ward. Rawlings went home afterward. Upon entering his apartment, he immediately approached his bookshelf, found a Bible, and began to read. Maurice Rawlings sought a description of hell in this book. Several days later, Rawlings approached the patient he'd saved to inquire about what he had seen during his cardiac arrest. He wanted to know if the patient had seen a pit of fire and hairy creatures. "What hell are you talking about? I saw nothing of the sort," the patient replied, looking at the doctor in astonishment. Maurice Rawlings detailed to the patient what had happened during his revival. However, the patient had no negative recollections or sensations from that day. Rawlings speculated that the patient's memories were so horrifying that they had been erased from his consciousness, from the book Beyond Death's Door. Meanwhile, this man unexpectedly became a believer. Now he is a devoted Christian, although previously he would only enter a church by chance. He also hasn't forgotten our prayer and how he once or twice lost consciousness. He still has no recollection of his experience in hell, but he claims that he saw, as if from above, from the ceiling, the people below observing them as they worked on his body. Additionally, he remembers encountering his deceased mother during one of these episodes of dying. He saw his late mother for the very first time, as she had died when he was just 1.5 years old. His father had remarried, and he'd never even been shown photographs of his mother. "When I decided to end my life, I knew I was committing a sin, but I saw no other way out." Maurice Rawlings came to believe that our world mainly hears about positive near-death experiences. because patients who survive clinical death are usually interviewed several days afterward. According to him, by that time, negative impressions have faded from memory, leaving patients recalling only positive sensations. Rawlings was not the first to propose this idea. Another physician, Walter Myers, also advocated the immediate questioning of such patients. I believe science could learn a great deal if doctors began questioning patients immediately after they regained consciousness. At that point, their memories might still retain visions they experienced while unconscious, visions that may later fade away. Intrigued by this phenomenon, Maurice Rawlings approached his colleagues to inquire if they had encountered similar cases. Some indeed reported analogous patient experiences. One such case involved a 53-year-old woman who attempted suicide. I was a housewife. I felt my family treated me like a servant. Sometimes they behaved as if I didn't exist. One night I decided I didn't want to continue living this way. When I chose to end my life, I knew I was committing a sin, but I saw no other way out, the woman recounted. After losing consciousness, to her horror, she discovered her life had not ended. The woman remembered slowly descending into a dark pit. Within that darkness, she noticed a small bright spot gradually expanding. Soon, she clearly saw that flames were burning at the bottom of the pit. The further she descended, the hotter it became, and breathing grew increasingly difficult. Terrified by what she saw, the woman remembered God and began begging him for another chance. She regained consciousness in a hospital, where doctors informed her she had been unconscious for 2 days. Immediately, she shared her experience with the doctor, who dismissed her visions as hallucinations caused by an overdose of medication. Dr. Charles Garfield, based on his observations, concluded that by all indications, visions of life after death are fundamentally different from hallucinations caused by medication. My own observations confirm this. Patients who took medications known to cause hallucinations had experiences that were less realistic than those who did not use any medication at all. Furthermore, hallucinations induced by specific medications clearly relate to the present world, not to the afterlife. Dr. Maurice Rawlings, an American cardiologist, devoted a significant part of his career to studying near-death experiences, NDEs, of patients who survived clinical death. In his books, such as Beyond Death's Door and To Hell and Back, he thoroughly documented these phenomena. Rawlings asserted that many patients revived after cardiac arrest described experiences extending beyond conventional medical explanations. These experiences often included visions of bright lights, encounters with deceased relatives, sensations of leaving the body, and even feelings associated with heaven or hell. Dr. Rawlings emphasized that such experiences often led to profound transformations in patients' worldviews. Many reassessed their life priorities, became more spiritual, and began to appreciate life and relationships with loved ones on a deeper level. He also noted that near-death experiences were not confined to individuals from any specific culture or religion, suggesting a universal quality to these events. Rawlings urged the medical community to give more attention to researching these phenomena, believing they could provide valuable insights into the nature of human consciousness and the possible existence of life after death. Overall, Maurice Rawlings viewed death not as the end of existence, but rather as a transition into another form of being, based on extensive testimonies from his patients. Some of the patients interviewed by Maurice Rawlings experienced clinical death and various sensations multiple times. The doctor noted that during the first such episode, experiences could sometimes be negative, but subsequent experiences were invariably positive. At least in Rawlings's practice, the reverse never occurred. He gave an example of a patient who, at different periods in his life, suffered 3 heart attacks and was revived each time. During the first episode, the man found himself in a reddish mist and saw horrible creatures writhing around his feet. However, the next 2 episodes left him with very pleasant memories, and afterward, he no longer feared death. This patient is no longer alive, and I often wonder where he is now. Many people prefer to believe that death leads to destruction and oblivion. In response, I can refer them to the stories of my patients. If we refuse to listen to those individuals who claim to have seen life after death, we risk placing ourselves in a losing position. Because according to some accounts from my patients, dying isn't always safe, said Maurice Rawlings. How many more of these stories lie hidden in the depths of memory, at the edge of dreams, on the border between this world and the next? Each one is like a whisper from the past, an echo of something we're not yet able to explain. But if you feel like this is only the beginning, then you're already on the path. I'll tell you more. But everything in its time,